Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. Today, I will share with you the overview of LHDN e-invoice and practical considerations. Okay, so in today's session, we will cover a few key areas. So, starting with an overview of what e-invoicing is, its benefits, who is impacted, and how businesses can get ready for implementation. And we will also touch on penalties for non-compliance, and I will end with the practical consideration. Okay, first one is I talk about what is e-invoice. So e-invoicing refers to the digital exchange of invoices between supplier and buyers, replacing traditional paper or electronic documents such as invoice, credit notes, debit notes, and refund notes. So, Inland Revenue Board or IRBM will adopt a continuous transaction control model, which enables near real-time validation through the Myinvois Portal or API. So the e-invoice system supports B2B, B2C, and B2G transaction. So their purpose is to enhance Malaysia's tax administration through the digitalization. Okay, in this slide, you can see what an e-invoice is and what an e-invoice is not. So an e-invoice is a file that specified by IRBM. So they only accept two formats. One is XML and then the other one is JSON. If any invoices under PDF, doc, JPEG, email, or any other format, it's not accepted. So e-invoice is equals to the invoice that issued by supplier or buyer plus validation by IRBM will be equals to e-invoice. So next one, I will cover the benefits of e-invoice. First, it improves the business efficiency and increase tax compliance by reducing manual efforts and errors. The unified process allows for the creation and submission of invoice electronically. This seamless system integration also facilitates efficient and accurate tax filing, particularly benefiting large companies with time and cost savings. For like SMEs, it helps digitalize the financial reporting, aligning with industry standards. And then e-invoicing also provides input tracking and auditability. It offers better visibility and traceability of invoices through the entire life cycle, allowing business to monitor payment activities and maintain real-time audit trials. Okay, other than that, we also have more benefits. First one, it streamlines workflow and collaboration. Businesses can seamlessly exchange invoices electronically with trading partners and integrate e-invoicing with their accounting or ERP system. So it can help to eliminate the manual process. Okay, second one is it also support environmental sustainability by reducing the need for paper, printing, and transportation. So you don't need to buy a printer and buy a paper to print out the invoices anymore. You just need to use the e-invoice, which is digitalized e-invoice to send to your buyer or your supplier. Okay, third one is compliance and security. E-invoicing ensures businesses adhere to regulatory requirements and industry standards. Encryption and secure protocol protect sensitive financial data from unauthorized access or fraud. Then last one is e-invoicing can integrate with other digital technologies such as electronic payment and supply chain management platforms, enabling end-to-end automation and optimization of business operation. Okay, so this is all about benefits of e-invoice. Then next one is who is affected by e-invoice. So for actually all the individuals, all the taxpayers in Malaysia will be affected by e-invoice. Okay, this includes association, bodies of person, and branch like business trust and cooperative societies, corporations, partnership, limited liability. Everyone must follow all organization. Everyone must follow the e-invoice requirement. Okay, then okay, there are various scenarios where e-invoice are required. First one is for proof of income. E-invoice need to be issued whenever a sales or transaction occurs to recognize taxpayers' income. Okay, second one is proof of expenses. E-invoice cover purchases or spending, including returns and discounts. Additionally, in cases like involving foreign suppliers who do not use Malaysia's Myinvoice system, the taxpayer must issue a self-billed e-invoice to document the expenses. So you need to prove that you already have that expenses to the IRBM site. Now I talk about types of e-invoices. So IRBM mentioned that they put 4 types of e-invoices. One is invoice, a request transaction between a supplier and buyer, and can include like self-billed invoice for the expenses side also. Then second one is credit note, is issued to correct the errors or apply discount. It's to reduce the value of original invoice, but without returning the money. Okay. Third one is debit note. It indicates additional charges on a previous issued e-invoice. Then last one is the refund note. It's to confirm the refund of payment to the buyer. It's usually used when the money is returned. Okay, so this is the e-invoice implementation timeline. So if the taxpayer's annual turnover or revenue is more than 100 million, then the timeline implementation date is 1st August. Then for the second phase, which is 25 million, between 25 million and 100 million is 1st January 2025. Then all the taxpayers must implement the e-invoice by 1st July 2025. Okay, but other than that, LHDN, they introduced 6 months interim relaxation period, which is for each phases, they have six months grace period. So during this 6 months grace period, they can only issue consolidated e-invoice to their all the transaction, including the self-billed transactions. And then they also can like they have flexible description, which means you don't need to just only put the specific receipt or reference numbers on the description of product or services. So you can write anything on the description of product or services that filled on the invoice. And then no individual invoices required. So means if let's say your buyer requested the e-invoice, then you don't need to issue the e-invoice as long as you already submitted as a consolidated e-invoice. Okay, then no prosecution during the relaxation period. So IRBM will not prosecute for non-compliance with e-invoice requirements during the interim period as long as consolidated e-invoice are submitted. Okay. Other than those all taxpayers, but there is some exemption for some entities, like for example, rulers and their consorts and government and authorities. Like this government and authorities, including the government, and state authorities, local authorities, then statutory authorities and bodies, also facilities provided by these entities, for example, hospitals, clinics, and then consular and diplomatics. Also, the individuals who do not conducting the businesses, and SMEs, MSMEs with annual turnover or revenue below 150,000. So this mentioned exempted persons, they don't need to issue e-invoice including the self-bill, but they need to keep their receipt, bills, or invoices to use as a tax purpose as a proof of expenses. But if any supplier providing goods or services to this exempted person, they still must follow the e-invoice requirements. Okay, they still need to issue the e-invoice. And then if let's say these exempted persons, they own a businesses like entities, then they also need to comply with the e-invoice implementation timeline. But those exempted individuals and bodies also encouraged to adopt e-invoicing to support the government's digital initiatives. Okay. Then next one is like LHDN also adopts some process to simplify the e-invoices, like including the self-bill part. So following this income or expenses, if the businesses have this following this income and expenses, they don't need to issue e-invoices or self-billed invoices. For example, these are employment income, pension, alimony, distribution of dividends under specific conditions, zakat, contract value for buying or selling securities or derivatives at any stock or derivatives exchange, then disposal of shares in companies not listed on a stock exchange, except where the disposer is a company, LLP, trust body, or corporation society. Okay. Before the scholarship was exempted, but they already removed from the list. So no more exemption for the scholarship. Okay. Okay. So next part, I will talk about how to do the preparation for the e-invoice. Okay. So first, you need to understand the workflow of the e-invoice. So this is the overview workflow of the e-invoice. First one is starting with the issuing of the e-invoice. So as a taxpayer, or if let's say you are the supplier, then you must issue an e-invoice for your buyer. Then second one is after you submit the e-invoices to the IRBM site, they will validate your e-invoices. Then after they validate the invoices, if let's say your invoices is successfully validated, then third one, you will receive notification of the validated e-invoice. Then step 4 is you need to share the e-invoice with your customer. Then next step is like your buyer, your customer, or you have the option to reject or cancel the e-invoice within the 72 hours. Okay. So if let's say your buyer requested to cancel the e-invoice, then you have the option to accept the rejection or reject the rejection. So if you accept the rejection, then the e-invoice will be canceled. So you need to issue new e-invoice. If you don't want to cancel the e-invoice, then you can just keep the original e-invoice and then issue new type of e-invoice. Maybe, for example, credit note to amend the original document. Okay. Then last part is Myinvois Portal. In the Myinvois Portal, then you can, as a buyer or as a supplier, you can see all of the e-invoices that you submitted or that you received. Okay. So this is the overall workflow of invoices. Okay. And the next part is submission of e-invoice. For the submission of e-invoice, you have two options. One is using the Myinvois Portal. So Myinvois Portal is a portal hosted by IRBM itself. So this one is accessible to all the taxpayer. So you don't need to pay any fee for Myinvois Portal. So this Myinvois Portal also accessible to taxpayer who need to issue e-invoice where application means API connection is unavailable. Let's say you are using API for the e-invoice submission, but one of the day the API is down, you cannot, or the system is down, you cannot access, then you still can go to Myinvois Portal to do your submission. Okay. Second part is API. So this one is API is usually used to connect to your system, ERP system. So from your ERP system, the service provider will submit the e-invoice, your documents, to LHDN site through the API. So this API, using this API is usually ideal for the large taxpayer or businesses with substantial transaction volumes. So if let's say you have like too much transaction every day, then it's better to use API to do the submission. Okay, then next part is there are 55 data fields that are required to issue an e-invoice. So these fields are grouped into 8 categories. First one is address. So this address is including the supplier address and buyer address. Then second one is business details. Then third one is contact number. So this contact number also including the contact number of supplier and buyer. Then invoice details, and then parties, then party details, then payment information, then last one is product and services. So if let's say you are using API, then the service provider or ERP system, the software provider, they must understand this 55 data fields to map their own system for the successful submission. Pre-submission, like e-invoice submission requirements. So before you submit the e-invoice, first one is you must have digital certificate. So this digital certificate verifies the identity of the issuer of the e-invoice. It ensures that digital signature confirms the e-invoice originates from a specific taxpayer. And also the hashed value of the digital signature will be included in the e-invoice API submission request body. Okay, so this part, the last part is usually will be managed by software provider. But this digital certificate, let's say you are using a ERP system or you are using API from the software provider. Usually, if they are intermediary, then they will use their own digital certificate. But if let's say you use as ERP system, then you may need to purchase your own digital certificate. So these are the digital certificate provider, which is approved by government. So you can take a note for this part. The next part is e-invoice preparation. So for the e-invoice preparation, taxpayer must configure their system or work with a technology provider to generate the e-invoices. And then if the e-invoice must be in XML or JSON format. And then also containing both mandatory and optional fields in the structure defined by the regulatory requirements. So before your e-invoice submission, you must look into this two parts. Okay, then next part is overview of e-invoice workflow, submission via Myinvois Portal or API. Okay, so they have 9 steps here. First step is creation and submission. If you look at this one in red color, so it's issuance of the e-invoice. It's including invoice, debit note, credit note, refund note. So you have 2 options. One is from Myinvois Portal. The second one is API. You can use any of them. So any of them will be submitted to IRBM cloud. Then second one is e-invoice validation. After you submit the e-invoice to IRBM, then they will return respond to you through API or Myinvois Portal. One is validated e-invoice, then other one is maybe error message if it's invalid. So you can see the return message from IRBM. So why the submission is failed. If let's say if validated, then they will send back the UUID, unique identifying number, to you through Myinvoice Portal or API. Then third one is if let's say your submission is successfully validated, then notification will be sent to both supplier and buyer side. Okay, then Fourth step is sharing of e-invoice. Then supplier side need to share the e-invoice with the buyer, like visual representation of the invoice. Okay. Usually if your e-invoice is validated, then you can generate QR code and then you can send it to your buyer if it's individual submission. If it's consolidated submission, then you don't need to share the e-invoice with your buyer. Since it's consolidated e-invoice, there's no buyer, it's general public. Okay, then after that, buyer can request for the rejection. So the request for the rejection will be sent to supplier. The supplier can accept the rejection, or they can just like leave it or reject the rejection request. So once the request for the rejection is clicked by the buyer using Myinvois Portal or from service provider portal, then supplier will receive the notification. Then they can cancel it. So once they click cancel, then the e-invoice on the IRBM card will be canceled, which is this one, cancellation notification. So after this one cancelled, which means IRBM, once you can supply cancel, the e-invoice will be cancelled and the cancellation notification will be sent out to the buyer, also the supplier side. Okay. Then after, if let's say you cancel the e-invoice, then you need to issue a new one to the IRBM to replace the canceled e-invoice. If you cannot cancel the e-invoice within 72 hours, then you need to issue credit note or debit note to amend the original e-invoice. Okay, so this is all the process. Then next one is storing. Usually IRBM will store all the e-invoices to their own IRBM database. Then next part is from the IRBM cloud supplier, they can retrieve all the e-invoice that they sent or they submitted or received. So they can request to view their submitted or received e-invoice by calling the API or through the Myinvois Portal. Okay, so this is the whole overview of the e-invoice. Okay, and then there is 4 types of e-invoice status. So one is submitted. So submitted means the e-invoice has been successfully transmitted to Myinvoice system and passed the immediate validations, including e-invoice structure and core field validation. So after the submission, then it will be valid. So valid means the e-invoice has passed all the immediate and background validation to meet all the data field requirements, formats, and standards as defined by the IRBM. So once it's valid, then supplier can share the UUID QR code to their buyer. But sometimes it may be invalid. It means the e-invoice has been filled one or more validation checks due to incorrect data field requirements, formats, or standards as defined by the IRBM. Then you need to check why it's invalid and issue the e-invoice. Then the fourth one is cancelled, means an e-invoice can only be cancelled by the supplier within 72 hours of its validation date and time. A cancelled e-invoice is no longer valid, and if necessary, a new e-invoice is required to be issued. So the supplier only have 72 hours to cancel the e-invoice, which the e-invoice must be validated first. If it's not validated, you cannot cancel, you cannot do anything. It must be validated. After validation, then you only have 72 hours to cancel the e-invoice. Okay, next one is penalties and offense. Okay, failure to issue e-invoice is an offense under Section 120 of the Income Tax Act 1969. It will result in a fine of not less than 200 and not more than 20,000 or imprisonment not exceeding 6 months or both for each non-compliance. So you must make sure that you understand your timeline and you understand the requirements from IRBM and to implement the e-invoice. Okay, then last part is the practical consideration. So this, firstly, you need to understand the regulatory and compliance. It's essential to understand a specific e-invoicing regulation that apply to your business. Make sure your e-invoice format and everything complies with all relevant tax laws. And next one is technology infrastructure. Assess your current technology set up and determine if upgrades are needed. This includes implementing compatible e-invoicing software and updating your accounting system to facilitate smooth operations with your trading partners. Then data security also is crucial. Protect sensitive information by using encryption and secure transmission protocols. Additionally, implement access control and conduct regular security audits to safeguard data. Then scalability and flexibility ensure that your e-invoicing solution can scale with your business growth and adapt to evolving needs such as international expansion and changes in regulatory requirements. Okay. Then also supplier and customer onboarding is very important. Like develop a strategy for efficiently onboarding suppliers and customers onto your e-invoicing platform to ensure everyone is aligned. Like, for example, encourage buyers to request e-invoice as soon as possible to ensure timely processing, and at the same time, ensure that suppliers can submit e-invoice to the IRBM promptly to meet buyers' requests. Means it's your request actually, that so you need to make sure that your supplier can submit the e-invoice, so you can also at the same time you can receive the valid e-invoice from your supplier as a proof of expenses. Okay. And then change management is another important factor. Like create a change management plan that communicates the benefits of e-invoicing to your internal teams, address any resistance proactively, and promote buy-in from all stakeholders. So means you need to let your all staff to understand the importance of e-invoice. Then next one is compliance monitoring and reporting. Establish process to monitor compliance with e-invoicing regulation. Like this includes conducting periodic audits and generating reports as required by tax authorities. Then last one is continuous improvement. Always look for ways to evaluate and optimize your e-invoicing process, gather feedback from stakeholders, and explore opportunities for automation to enhance efficiency. Okay, that's all for today's session. I hope the session has clarified what to expect as we move towards implementing the e-invoice system in Malaysia. Okay, so now I am open for a question. If you have any question, you can ask now about the basic requirements from LHDN and e-invoice implementation. Okay, if no question, okay, I think I can end the session. Thank you for your participation. Okay, bye-bye.